over 130 residential schools operated in Canada. The first federal residential school began around 1883. The last closed in 1996. These schools, predominantly funded and operated by the Government of Canada and Roman Catholic, Anglican, Methodist, Presbyterian, and United Churches, were created to enforce the adoption of European traditions, languages, and lifestyles by First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children. To better understand the history of these schools and what it meant to Indigenous communities, we invited residential school attendees and their families to share their stories and experiences. For some, these stories are a moment of healing. For others, a chance to talk about the history and the system. All are important to preserve for future generations. My name is Ryan Funk, and with my co-host Lisa Muswagon, we followed these stories for We Stand Together.
First of all, I'd like to ground myself. I have my eagle feather. I don't know if you can see me. This is one of the things that I normally do because this is a heavy topic for me, and I've done it several times for Laurentian University. So I'd like to ground myself first, with a smudge and a little prayer. Good morning. My name is Martina Osawamick, and I'm from Manitoulin Island, Wikwemkong. At this time of my life, I'm living in Sudbury more so than Wikwemkong. I do go home on weekends because that is my home. I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. One lives in Montana, and there's 2 that live in Manitoulin and Wikwemkong, and the other one is here in Sudbury, who is living with me at this time. I'll begin my story of my residential school experience. I'll start by remembering the things that today I remember. I was taken at the age of 5, and I was there till I was 12. 1954 was when I was taken. And I didn't recall any of my memories of residential school for many years. It took me a long time to realize that I did go to residential school, and it was my mother that told me at the age of 17, she said, "You went to residential school." I said, "I didn't go to residential school." And she said, "Yeah, you did. The Indian agent came and picked you up at the old farm where we used to live." So that started my memories of what my mother was sharing. And I had to go to that school. I got married young, and I asked my husband at the time to drive me there because I couldn't recall any of those memories that my mother was telling me. So when I went there, that's when I started, getting those memories. I was really trying to prepare myself for this morning.
I understand. Take your time.
And when I started remembering, when my mother told me an Indian agent came and picked me up, then I started remembering an old car, coming up to the old farm. And I didn't know why I was being put in that car. And I could see my mom, and this is a memory I have, seeing her with a dress on, and she had her apron on, and she was standing there waving at me, and I didn't know where I was going. And anyways, the way I went, and it was to Spanish. Other memories started to creep up, every time. I still go there now, but in the beginning when they had these residential school gatherings, I couldn't even go. They had the first one, and I couldn't even get myself to go because I was still in, very angry state. When my husband took me there, I started remembering many little things. I remember being there, getting my hair cut like bangs and like this. very short. And all of the children, we all had the same kind of haircuts. We were given uniform, a purple, like not a purple, but a navy blue uniform, a little uniform and a white shirt. And all the clothes that I had, my mother had packed for me. I never saw those clothes again. And so it was these clothes that were the uniform and the white shirt that I remember. And as time went on, I remember, that there were all these levels of floors, and we slept on the top floor. And I believe it's about the fourth floor on top, as I can remember. On the main floor, like almost like in the basement part of the entrance of the back area, we had little cubby holes, and that's where we would put our anything that was special to us. If there was something that was we did, like a drawing or whatever, we would put it in our little cubby holes. But I remember these nuns when I first got there, and this is a memory that came, and the memory was, being given a number, and all my clothing had these numbers on the back of the collar, like the back. They had the number, and they knew who the clothing belonged to, I guess, when they were washed. I remember this was in the beginning of Walt Disney stuff. They made us walk quite a long distance, and we were just young children. We walked to Spanish, like the town itself, and we went to this big building, and they showed us, a children's Walt Disney characters. I forget what it was. Roadrunner. I don't know. I forget what it was. But anyways, they showed little clips of those movies to us, and that was my first time, seeing something like that. As other memories creeped up, one time, and I'm not going to share every. I just remember one time we were all lined up downstairs, like before we could go up to the dormitory, they call it. We all had to strip our underpants, under panties off, and we would have to open it in front of this I don't know, matriarch or nun, and that nun would look into our underwear, and if you had a little bit of a stain, your ears would be pulled to one side and put on one side of the room, and everybody knew that you had a little stain on your underwear. We were made to wash our underwear, and it was very humiliating. There was so many things that happened, to myself, and I had to go through a lot of counseling in regards to my own personal spirit. I remember being made to, we all had to kneel down and say the rosary almost every night. And I don't know, if we didn't say it properly, we would be strapped. And if we were ever caught speaking the language, we would be strapped for sure. I had two sisters there. They took me aside because I always wanted to talk to my sisters, but they didn't want to acknowledge me as their sister at the time, because if we were caught talking, and then we would be strapped. So my sister, older sister, she says, "Don't speak the Nishnabem win. Nishnabem see," she says. And I said, "Oh, I can't talk to you anymore." And she said, "No, you can't talk to me in this Nishnabem win." So that was very sad for me, and I became not wanting to, be with others, like because of I had to speak English, I guess I was told. But secretly, my other sister, she would take me aside, and she would speak to me in the Nishnabemwen. But they didn't stay there too long, themselves. I was there, for the 7 years that I was there, and I did talk to other ones, from Sagmuk, Mississauga, that spoke the language at the time. For myself, every summer that I did go home, I was ostracized from my siblings. They would call me Jagnashi Quest, and that means white girl, little white girl, because I couldn't speak Nishnabemwen. And so all these summers that I would go home, I tried my darnest to speak the language. And again, they gave me that nickname, Shagnashi Quest. And throughout the years, like I always felt like not part of my own family. And I did go home one time uh, in the summer, and I saw the poverty of my own family. My mother was in the hospital. My father must have been out somewhere, and there was all these children, and there was nothing in the house but a crust of bread. And I soaked it, so I could spoon feed every one of my siblings. And I thought, well, I'm better off where I was, better off in Spanish. Like I kind of like embraced okay, I'm going back, to Spanish. But when I was 12, this is when I don't know, I just couldn't, things happened there, and I just couldn't go back. And my parents took me to Mantawning, and they were trying to get me on the bus. I cried so hard. And I asked my mom, she had the dress on and she was trying to get me into, I remember that flower printed dress she had on. And that's another memory that came, and I'm trying really hard not to go back to Spanish. And anyways, my crying must have really touched my father's heart. My father was a very strict man. He says, let's just take that girl home. And I thought, oh my goodness, they're actually going to not let me go there. And I was so thankful. And so I went home. But again, during that time, there was things that were happening in our communities, like the alcohol it was being brought in. There was liquor store and all these things. So a dysfunctional life, in my home. So I ran away, and I went to stay with my two uncles and a grandmother that I just adopted. While she was the mother of these. Well, I call them uncles, because they have the same last name, and that's where I stayed, for 3 years. As time went on, like I would go once in a while to go home, but not too long. I'd stay there, and I went to Indian day school. But as I think back, the residential school in the Spanish, one time where I fell from the fire escape, it was like a, I don't know, a metal piece, and you had to come down on this fire escape. Anyways, I fell probably from the third floor. I couldn't hang on to that because it was so cold, and all the kids had to come down that fire escape. But I don't know. For me, I don't know what happened. I fell and I landed on my back, and then I was taken to Walford. I think it was. There was a doctor that I was taken to. I ended up in the infirmary. They call it an infirmary, a nursing, where the students that had injuries, they were put in that infirmary. I was there for a while, and I could hear, unusual things, happening. The sisters, and there was a priest that came in, and things like that, and the giggling, and, behind closed doors. And I didn't know what was happening. Like that was such a terrible experience there in that infirmary for me. And I was so glad, like I got out of there. Even at nighttime, I was so terrified of falling asleep. Things would happen, and sometimes wetting the bed was something that was happening to some of us. And then we were made to wash the sheets and then hang them out the window. We would get ridiculed by other classmates, if this happened to us. I often think, why did I block that out of my memory? But it was so a terrible experience. I asked my mom one time, why did you send me there? In my early 30s, I went on a program to work on myself, to heal that inner child of myself, that went through lots of trauma. Remembering these things, every time I go there, there's another memory that comes. But I go there anyways because, like, I thought I'd be very strong to do this morning. Like as I was thinking about this, I've done this presentation, but more in, looking at the historical stuff that has happened to people, the intergenerational effects. And I could see, when we talk about intergenerational things, I could see how, as a parent of four children, how I've passed on my own, I don't know, the way that I raised there, like in terms of cleanliness, always cleaning. As a young mother, that's all I did was clean, 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 and not even allow my children to make a mess because I don't know, that's just the way it was in Spanish. We would be made to scrub floors, get on our knees and scrub the floor with the hard brushes, and everybody would have a little patch to do. All of these things, even I brought into my children's world. In the beginning of my parenting, I was always yelling at my children. And I wondered why am I doing this? Because my children might be afraid of me. And those are the things that I faced, being afraid of these teachers. And so I was putting this on my children, yelling at them. And so it was time when I realized that I was not a good parent by doing that. So I tried really hard to be a good parent. My kids were still young. Even one time I always feel sorry for this. I made my little girl kneel in the corner of the room because she cut her brother's hair. And I thought, how cruel can I be, to make a little 3-year-old girl in the corner of a room. But those are the things that, as I was made to do when I was in residential school, and I always tell my children, I'm sorry, if I wasn't a very good parent. But they say, Mommy, you changed over the years. And I said, yes, I did, because you all helped me get through this. And with all of the stuff I've been through with residential school, and then there was this money that was being sent to individuals, about the residential school money, IRS, like the ones that got 10,000, and then there was 3,000 for every year. But you had to make sure that people knew that you were there in all those years. And I didn't have time for researching. Okay, oh, I remember this one. Maybe she can write me a letter. So those times, I think maybe, and the records were lost in Spanish. So anyway, I didn't get the full amount, but that's okay. Money isn't everything. And so I think about all the things that I've lost in going there, my parenting skills, my cultural things. When I was in my 20s, I started to think, I didn't even like priests. I started to go towards my cultural identity, finding out who I am as an Anishinaabe. So I turned away from the church and I sought out ceremonies, and I all these things through in my 20s. I took my children, and this is what has helped me out, is in my identity. The way our ancestors live is by going back to ceremony. Raising my kids that way has helped me get through all of this stuff, with the residential school, but also talking to my children, all the things that I endured. The loss of language was a big thing for me. But in the time that when I got home finally at the age of 12, I was determined to learn my language. And by living with my adopted grandmother, she only spoke the language. So I was able to get my language. But I remember every time that I came home during the summertime, my uncles would laugh at me because I guess I sounded, cute to them, because I couldn't understand that some things were living and some things were not considered alive. I would say, pass me the salt. And then I'd use the wrong imperative, bishwa zitagan, and they would start laughing, things like that. But I understand now, how I must have sounded to try and relearn the language. Throughout all those years, there was one time that I went to one of the residential school gatherings, and I was looking out the window. I was really looking on the rocks there, and then I could see myself as a young child running up those rocks, even my uniform and wearing that, and there was an indent of a rock, and they placed the Virgin Mary there. So I remember seeing myself get on my knees and bow my head and make the sign of the cross, and then I started getting up and started running up that hill. These things have these visions or things that I come back into my memory. It's okay, because that inner child in myself have healed from all the wounds that I have experienced there at that school. I do acknowledge the English language and how I was able to speak it when I came back, but I couldn't find anybody that spoke the language, and only one girl that was raised by her mom and dad, and they only spoke English to this girl, like broken English. And so she became my friend, and another girl that went to Spanish for a couple years, she became my friend. That's how it was. When I think about all the other things, like did the laundry. There was one Native woman that worked there, Mrs. Cooper. She was always friendly to all the little children. And there was a certain room way down, maybe close to the boiler room or whatever. They had a little room there. And my sister was telling me one time she heard our other middle sister, old, like there was my sister, there was two of them, and the one in the middle between me and the older one, she was taken in that room. And holy jeez, did I ever cry, listening to my older sister telling me they didn't know what was happening to her. And that sister there, the one in the middle, she died in Toronto at a very young age. Like I think she was even like 20, 21. She drank a lot, probably to kill the pain. And we were made to work. We were made to work as young children on the farm. And we were made to always kneel down and say these prayers, till we remembered them. As years went by, the ones that were graduating, sometimes these Native young women would be kind of like a substitute aide, or, to the nun, to the teacher. Eh? That was nice, to see that happening, like with a Native person, helping with the classroom. Anyways, I always remember those Dick and Jane books. I kind of just laugh today when I hear that, see Dick go up, see Dick go down, these Dick and Jane books. And those were the things that we were made to read. So I just kind of, I don't know, like my experience there was not a very positive one. I know that some of the students did get, they felt like it was a privilege to be going to school there, but those became the pets of the nuns, and they were given probably some of those things that were in some of our suitcases that were brand new. Those are the things that the pets receive for being a good role model for them. Didn't speak the Stabeman, but only English. So I think of all the things I've gone through in my residential school, the very first time I did this on Zoom, I had the same experience like what I'm experiencing now. How could this happen, with so many Native children? And then I heard another story from one of my aunts that went there, and she said she saw one of the nuns coming with a young girl, and she had a little blanket, and something was wrapped in that blanket, and they were going into the incinerator. And I thought, oh my gosh, how could someone do that kind of stuff and burn a child? I think it was 3 years ago, I went on this water walk, and this walk was coming from Garson to Spanish. And I thought, I'm going on that walk to heal my spirit. I walked to Spanish. It was a good experience because not only was I walking for the water, but also walking for my spirit that the things that I remember and carry. It was so wonderful that we were able to do that ceremony that happened over there. And I was really happy that that happened because I think about all those children that never made it home. And there was even some of the sad stories of one girl. She was there at 3 years old. I didn't know that they were that young, but she was 3 years old when she was brought there with all her siblings. And this little girl never ever made it home. When she got married, she was in the East Coast by then because she didn't know where she belonged. Finding her roots were from Wikwemkong. And I thought, oh, and now at least people from Wikwemkong, the siblings, they know what happened to their sister.
At the beginning, you were talking about grounding yourself with a feather and smudging. What is the significance?
On my journey of looking for what our ancestors lived, how sacred the land is to them, how sacred the animals and the plants, like the tree life and all the plants here. We have medicines, and one of them is that sage, that I had just lit here. And those have become things that have helped us because we're in connection with our ancestors. When we think about this universe, like we are so grateful that the sun shines upon us every day and how the moon plays for all women. We go by that circle of the moon and the star life. We always go back to the star world. So I think about all these things of how important our sacred breath is, the so much to be grateful for. And these are the things that have helped me on my journey, in terms of recognizing. And the eagle feathers are given to people. And I was given this one as a recognition, for all the things that I do for the community. And so we carry our feathers in that good way, because when we hold that feather, it's telling of the walk that we have gone through, and the walk that we're on our journey right now. And it talks about truth, and that's why I hold this feather, my truth of my journey of residential school. I thought I was very well prepared for this morning, and in terms of getting my smudge ready, I didn't think it was going to affect me. It happens, sometimes.
Multicultural is located on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis.